Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Zahara al-fasadu fil bahri wal bahri bima kasabat aydin nasi liyuziqahum ba'da alladhi 'amilu la'allahum yarji'un. قل سيروا في الأرض فانظروا كيف كان عاقبة الذين من قبل كان أكثرهم مشركين. These are two verses from the 30th chapter of the Holy Quran. The translation is, corruption has appeared on land and sea because of what men's hands have done or have wrought, that he may make them taste the fruit of some of their doings, so that they may turn back from evil. Say, travel in the earth and see how evil was the end of those before you. Most of them were idolaters. Commenting on these two verses, there were 42 and 43 from this surah. Hazrat Muslim Anhu said that the verse means to say that the nations of the world have become corrupt to the very core, politically, socially, and morally, and their corruption was the result of what their hands had wrought or had done. The verse warns in the second verse of the disbelievers that their rejection of the Holy Prophet would lead them to ruin. The fact that the rejection and persecution of divine messengers has always resulted in the destruction of the rejectors is written large on the page of history. And before going into deeper into the reason why I chose the verses today, in my Dars al-Quran, I'll be covering different subjects, tarbiyat subjects, which will benefit the members. I've already covered the responsibilities of husband and wife and children. And there are also other issues which I'll be covering, which have been suggested to me, like hypocrisy, dishonesty, matrimonial issues, and also the race for getting more and more, that is a higher standard of living, and gaining help for reformation by following the example of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ibadat in Ramadan, and also there are many others. But underlying all these issues is the lack of morality, and that is that lack of morality is because there is a more of a reliance on the person's self. There is more reliance on gaining worldly means or using worldly means to achieve your aims, and also selfishness. And then ultimately also there is a lack of reliance on Allah, and also a lack of belief in Allah. Before I can start to explain the ways in which to improve our moral condition, I need to diagnose the problems and extreme dangers that we face today, and propose a solution for them, and then I can then go into each one of them step by step, which I have already done last week. But I would like to first go over diagnosing the problem. We see a very beautiful analysis of the moral, religious, and social state of the world today, which was given by Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad Rahimahullah. And he said that examining the overall religious scenario, one cannot fail to notice that in religion, there seems to prevail a paradoxical situation today. In general, religion is losing its grip, yet simultaneously tightening it in different areas. In some sections of society, in almost all religions, there seems to be a powerful swing back in the direction of dogmas, with medieval rigidity, and intolerance of opposition. On the moral side, religion is on the retreat, crime is rampant, truth is disappearing fast, equity and the deliverance of justice are on the verge of extinction, social responsibilities to the society are being ignored, and a selfish individualism is gaining strength in its spread, even in such countries of the world as would otherwise claim to be religious. So that this is also the reason why I wanted to do this. So we understand that we are living in a society of promotion of many evils, and a dispromotion of the helping of other people and caring of other people, and it's completely opposite. It's a selfish, individualistic society that we're living in, and that we as Muslims are have to contend with. And then also commenting on the social order, particularly with reference to the same verse of the Holy Quran, which I recited in the beginning. Huzur said that unfortunately religious influence on moral behavior is fast being lost in society. To aggravate the situation further, a strong urge for liberation from religious obligations is in motion and gaining momentum almost everywhere in the contemporary world. So everything that in religion where there's an obligation or someone has to follow some rights for others that they are for themselves, they are moving away from. Yet there is also a panic born out of the growing lack of security and disorderliness in society, behavior running parallel to the trends to disregard religious and ethical codes, belief in a living God who has shaped not only the destiny of human beings, but who also has a right to determine the patterns of their day-to-day life is rapidly eroding. The Holy Quran summarizes this condition as Zahar al-fasadu fil bahri wal bahri. Disorder has inundated the land and sea, so it is covered everywhere like a flood. He goes on to say Christianity, being the predominant religion of the West, had until the turn of this century a strong and effective hold on the moral behavior of its followers in the West. But this is not anymore. Instead, a civilization has evolved due to the interplay of scientific socialism, rapid scientific development, and material progress, forcing Christianity to beat a retreat step by step and adopt a progressively diminishing role in molding social behavior. So it shifted from the religion to mold the behavior of the society, to giving that over to science to help to mold the behavior, to help the behavior, and also a material progress that would replace it. Moral behavior, therefore, in the West today is as little or as much Christian in its character as the moral behavior in most Muslim countries which are Islamic. The same, unfortunately, is the state of social and moral behavior elsewhere in the world. So a Muslim or a Christian or whatever religion a person claims to be is only that in name, but is not that in character, is not that in practice nowadays. Societies are beginning to crumble everywhere alike, as against the countries governed by totalitarian philosophies. The rising consciousness of individual liberty in the so-called free world is in itself becoming a lopsided trend, which is largely responsible for growing social misbehavior. So there is this two, dichotomies in the world of societies that we are seeing, this individualist, liberalistic idea, trend in society. And interestingly, when there was an interview on Deutsche Welle television where they were covering the recent COVID-19 pandemic in parts of Asia and in China, they were talking to a China person, and a China person was talking to the interviewer who was from France, and they were understanding that the situation had improved better there, whereas it hadn't in France and in Europe. And he had suggested this is because of the difference of society. The society looks out for in their society looks out for the whole. It's a totalitarian. Whereas he said your society doesn't seem that the people want to follow the rules. So this is the difference. And you can see that even people observing can understand. Now let's make a contrast, or not. Let's look at how there wasn't actually a contrast. There was actually a great similarity, resemblance with pre-Islamic Arabia. And the reason why we should look at this is that because this is the time when Allah has given a solution for the problems that are faced in the world, the social, economical, and so on and so forth. And they all stem from man's need to reform himself. And the promised Messiah, he explained this in his spiritually groundbreaking book, The Philosophy of the Teaching of Islam. And he writes that our Lord and Master, the Holy Prophet, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, was raised at a time when the world had been thoroughly corrupted. As God Almighty has said, Zahar al-fasadu fil barri wal bahri. Corruption has spread over land and sea. This means that the people of the book, as well as those who had no experience of revelation, had all been corrupted. The purpose of the Quran was to revive the dead, as it is said, "I'lamu anna Allaha yuhyil arda ba'da mawtiha." That is, know that Allah is about to revive the earth after its death. So this revival, or this moral reformation, is about to happen. And it did happen at that time, and the world at that time in Arabia was looking very similar to the whole world as it does look today. And at that time, the people of Arabia were steeped in barbarism. No social pattern prevailed, and they took pride in every type of sin and misconduct. A man married an unlimited number of wives, and they were all addicted to the use of everything unlawful. They considered it lawful to marry their mothers, and that is why God Almighty has prescribed حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمْ أُمَّهَاتِكُمْ. That is, today your mothers are made unlawful for you. This is something very disgusting, but even in this society where trends make the social behavior through constant repetition, and this is even something in media we can find, even in some popular movies as well, this idea of this. Then he said that they ate the meat of dead animals. Some of them were even cannibals. It's a very strange thing that even now in New York, just recently, there has been a law passed allowing the restaurants to eat the flesh of a human being, so long as the person who has died has willed over their body that they will be eaten by it. It's a very disgusting situation of affairs of the world that we are living in today. Many of them denied the existence of God. They killed their female infants with their own hands. This is still something going on even to this day with what is happening. We find even in India. You can even attribute this to abortion. They killed orphans and devoured their sustenance. They had the appearance of human beings, but were bereft of reason. They possessed no modesty, no shame, and no self-respect. They drank liquor like water. The one among them who indulged indiscriminately in fornication was acknowledged as the chief of his tribe. So the same thing, goes for, in the media, in the trend, it's cool that, how many girls you can be with. This is a very similar attitude was back then. They were so utterly ignorant that their neighborhood being called them the unlettered ones. As such time, and for the reform of such people, our Lord and Master, the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, appeared in Mecca. This was the time that called for the three types of reform that were mentioned. So that these three types of reform, are mentioning in the book Philosophy Teaching of Islam. He says that and then he points out those 3 points of reform are: first, that to elevate a savage into a man, to make him from an animal into a human being, and then from that is to equip them with moral qualities. Then the stages of moral advancement, that's the second stage. And then finally is the stage of level of God, to become godly or spiritual. So he says that the Holy Quran comprehends all those 3 projects. It is important to understand that in today's age, Islam has predicted that a similar situation would come about of complete and total corruption, and the same solution of reform would come from Islam via the Khalifa of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that is his representative of the time, the Messiah and Mahdi. He would be the only one fit to face the challenges and destroy dangers of that time, and by exposing the threat and giving a means to defend oneself via moral and spiritual reformation. That moral reformation is outlined so magnificently and beautifully in his teachings, and particularly in the philosophy of the teaching of Islam. He also explained the dangers the world and Muslims would face according to the prophecies of the Holy Quran and the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That greatest danger would be the Dajjal. And I would like to explain that what the Dajjal is, because Dajjal is something representing many things or groups of people. And it's important to understand what the Dajjal is and understand the meaning. So I like to read some excerpts of what the Prophet has said about that to understand what that great threat is for Muslims. The Dajjal, and also this is pertaining to the whole world, the threat to the whole world. The word Dajjal has 2 connotations. First, it signifies a group which supports falsehood and works with cunning and deceit. Secondly, it is the name of Satan, who is the father of all falsehood and corruption. Another place he says that thus the Dajjal who is mentioned in Hadith is none other than Satan, who will be slain in the latter days. This is recorded in the book of Daniel as well as some Hadith. As Christianity is the perfect manifestation of Satan, Surah Al-Fatiha makes no mention of Dajjal, but describes supplication for refuge against the evil of the Christians. That is the evil. And we should understand that when through all the teachings of the Promised Messiah, that when he spoke about Christianity, this was the Christianity, the corrupt Christianity that came later on, not the Christianity that was presented by Jesus and his pious followers. And then he says that if the Dajjal had been some other mischief maker, the Holy Quran would not have enjoined us to seek refuge against the mischief of Daleen, those who have gone astray, but for security against the Dajjal. The verse Ila Yawmi Yub'athun mentioned above does not mean the day of resurrection, because Satan will remain alive only as long as men are alive. Satan does not operate on his own, but through his agents, who are the people who deify a human being. Being a group of people, they are called Dajjal. As in Arabic, Dajjal also connotes a group. So the Satan not meaning an actual Satan itself, but Satan meaning that he has agents. Satan takes on agents to do his work, and in groups, and which is the meaning in Arabic of Dajjal also, that it is a group of people, of deceivers. If Dajjal is taken to mean someone other than the misguided preachers of Christianity, this would entail a contradiction, because the very hadith which indicates that the Dajjal will prevail over the earth in the latter days also indicate that in those days the power of the church will overwhelm all religions. This contradiction can only be solved by affirming that the two are one and the same. And then he goes on to explain that Dajjal also has another um, sort of branch or branches within it. And he said that they're like, one, the Christian missionaries, and second, they're like European philosophers. They act like the two jaws of the promised Dajjal, with which he devours people like faith like a python. First, it is the common and ignorant people who get caught in the wiles or the deceptive strategies of the missionaries, and then those who happen to escape their clutches, being disgusted with the disgraceful and false beliefs, are caught in the net of the European philosophers. I see that the common people are more vulnerable to the lies of the clergy, whereas the intellectual ones are more susceptible to the false spread by the philosophers. So you see that, even this has happened in our time, and we were discussing that today in another conference about what had happened with the people in Quebec, how they turned out of complete revulsion from their church, and they moved away from that, and they moved away through to something different, uh, and they moved away from their religion, and out of revulsion and hatred for the the things which they had experienced at the hands of those Christian priests. Sorry about that. I just had some problem with my phone. Hazur also explained that Gog and Magog is another people who were also another people within, or branches within, the Dajjal, and he said that they were the Christian nations, or European nations. And he gave that the description, being that because they also excelled others, that is, Gog and Magog excelled others in great prestige and material wealth, and they were at the heights of everything in this world, but they deprived all spirituality. And then further, we understand from that the Gog and Magog, Gog representing communism, and Magog representing the capitalism, the two systems that are running and clashing today in today's world, and creating conflict. And we're seeing that all around, and we're living in that conflict today. And it's also not just a war, physical war or a cold war. It's also an ideological war as well, an ideological war of which society is better, which society is going to beat the other one. Then the promised Messiah, alayhi salam, he explained a very important thing about the nature of Messiah, that the Messiah's touch will be able to, Masa will be able to reform the people, will bless the people, meaning that, and also his breath will also, reform the people, meaning that they will be cured from this Dajjal through his speeches and through his, his teachings. And then he explained also further that the threat that the Dajjal have is that they are able, even not through coercion, but only just through their speeches, through their concentration, their satanic spirit, they're able to create chaos in the society. And he said particularly about the time of the promised Dajjal, that there would be a time of misconduct, drunkenness, lying, promiscuity, materialism, fraud, tyranny, oppression, famine, and epidemics become the order of the day. So we are seeing all this, and now we are in an epidemic. This is specifically what the promised Messiah mentioned around 100 years ago, when describing the Dajjal and all of the situation around, and the chaos that they would come from them. I'm not saying that this pandemic is from them, but I'm just saying that he's saying that that would be the norm of the day when the Dajjal would come. And also one of the things that Dajjal would create a religious tension between religions. We're seeing exactly that happening today. Now, there is also a prediction that the promised Messiah had given, or an explanation that the promised Messiah has given in Kashti Nu, that not that the promised Messiah gave, but he explained that Islam gave over 1400 years ago, that the Muslims would turn out to be copying the Jews and the Christians. And I would like to read what he said in Kashti Nu. And it's very important that we nowadays we understand the this book, because this book explains to the people in a time of great pandemic that was going on in India at that time. And these are very important things that we should focus on and look at. Why the Prophet Messiah mentioned during that time. So he said that it is part of the doctrine held by the Muslims that in the latter days, many thousands of so-called Muslims will come to resemble the Jews. This had been prophesied in the Holy Quran at many an instance. Moreover, one can easily notice and observe that thousands of Muslims are either converting to Christianity or choosing to live entirely free and under unrestrained lives like those of Christians. So they may not be converting to Christianity, the Muslims, but they are choosing to live a free, unrestrained life away from their religious obligations. In fact, many such people are still referred to as Muslims, prefer the Christian way of life. Despite their being referred to as Muslims, they hold a strong aversion towards prayer, fasting, and injunctions which relate to lawful and unlawful matters. It can be seen that both these classes of people who have become like the Jews and Christians are prevalent in this country. So this is the state of affairs 100 years ago in India. And this is something, if we reflect, we look at, we can see this is still the current situation that the Muslims are in today. So without going deeply and reading this whole part of Kashti Nu or Noah's Ark, the promised Messiah here is saying that if the Ummah has been destined or is been mentioned in the Quran as the best Ummah created for mankind, then how is it if they just are producing the people who are following bad customs and or are following corruption? How is it that this is a complete contradiction? So what Hazur then explained, that in this understanding about the Muslims in the latter days, that they would represent, yes, the Jews in their in the form of Judaism, which has got, we can see the time of Jesus, the time now in the form of extremism, which we see Muslims are following, and also that the Muslims who are adopting Christianity not in conversion, maybe so, maybe, or in just by their lifestyle, the free restricted lifestyle, unrestricted lifestyle. And then he said, but if this is the case, how do we that if this is the best ummah? So he said that this is also a prophecy that there will be another category of people who will represent the children of Israel, and they will be from among the Muslims who will be like the pious children of Israel were. So the righteous, the righteous group of Jews, and the righteous who came out in thousands and hundreds, and he talked about how there will be a group of Muslims in the latter days who will represent those from among the Jews and the children of Israel, he said. So that means that there will be destined a reformation among the Muslims. So we should think in our hearts according to this time that we are in, and according to the prophecies that are explained that the Muslim would face in the future. And we should think that are we you know, moving towards being like the previous righteous people of the past, or are we becoming like the corrupt people of the past? Are we resembling them? Are we hypocritical in our nature? This is something very important. And Hazur said that also he said that um, that the way in which a person can protect himself from this is that, or be guided uh, uh, for this from these dangers, is that we should pray to God, as we find in the Surah Al-Fatiha, where we're asked, "Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim, sirat al-ladhina anamta alayhim, ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin," so that we would be among those people who are blessed in the past, not the ones who have been you know, looked with punishment from God and who have gone astray from God. So this is you know, in a sense, the warning plus the antidote that we should pray for the protection. And about the situation that we see now in today's day and age, our beloved Huzur Aidul Talib bin Aziz has mentioned that that yes, definitely, that this situation where Muslims are under the persuasion of the Western nations is prevailing and is there. And he also explained the situation in a very beautiful lecture, and I encourage every member to listen to that if they want to understand the issues of today where you have the clash of civilizations, where there is a misunderstanding between Islam and the West. He explained this, and it's a very, very beautiful lecture. But in that, Hazur said, and I like to quote from that: due to the modern means of travel and communication, the world has become a global village. The advent of television, mass media, and particularly the internet, have meant that nothing now remains hidden in the world, and so people who live economically deprived, who live in economically deprived countries, can see how those in affluent nations live. They are being influenced by Western civilization and desire to attain similar levels of material advancement and innovation. Thus, the assertion that Western or European civilization is threatened by the presence of Muslims does not hold water. Rather, Western civilization is influencing other parts of the world, and this includes the Muslim world. On the other hand, a fear that the religious and moral culture of the West could be threatened if Islam spreads in Europe is a more legitimate concern, and I shall now address this point. So he says, what is that? What is that real legitimate threat facing Europe? He said that firstly, it is undeniable that people are rapidly moving away from religion, and this trend is particularly acute in the West. In Western countries, whenever a census is conducted, it shows that people are less and less inclined towards religion or belief in God. Religion, given this a belief given this, I believe that the rapid increase of atheism is far greater threat to Western culture than Islam. Western values are centuries old and are based upon its religious traditions and especially on its Christian and Jewish heritage. However, these religious values and cultural norms are under attack from those who oppose all forms of religion and faith. So as a Muslim leader, I believe you should protect your heritage and culture by focusing your energies on arresting the decline in religion and bringing people back towards faith and belief, whether that be Christianity, Judaism, or any other. And it should not be that in the name of advancement, those values and moral standards that have been part of society for many centuries are suddenly abandoned. This is a you know, a major theme in one of the by our Khalifatul Masih Rabi, that whenever he talked about how you know, the society can progress and come back to have peace and have security is that if the society would focus on going back to its traditional value system, which they find in their religion and in their traditions of the past, and that and and this was a way in which to resolve this issue of Islam is something imposing upon the societies in which it's come into its own value system. Rather, he always stressed, and he said that we should, as a collective society which has many different nationalities living and many cultures living within them, they should try to adopt morality which is universal from among all the nations. And this should be the means for which we have commonality, and this should be the means for which we progress together, rather than saying that, staying at odds with each other and being all the time attacking one another, or all the time attacking religion. Rather, we should try to focus on, and even in terms of atheism, which is a very big issue and something which I would like to discuss, and I have to discuss because it's part of Reformation and morality, that in terms of tackling with atheist people, or people who do not want to follow religion, at least the humanitarian aspect, which lies embedded in everyone, should be something that we strive for, whether we are a secularist society, or we are a secularist government, or we reject religion. We should at least follow the basic moral, universal moral values which are common in everyone, and we cannot reject them. But anyhow, with that being said, Hazrat Khalifah Masih Rabi, he summed up really the four things which are threatening the society, making a destabilization in the society, and creating much disorder. And he said that this is born out of a society which is seeking after wealth. And he said that there are four factors which we can see in those societies, which are focused on that seeking of wealth. And he said that first is the growing of atheism. So you turn away from your God. Second, he says, which is what I just sort of said, was that the belief in the power of God, to be a part of taking part of the human affairs, and shaping human conduct, becomes weakened. It becomes not useful anymore. And then the third is that a progressive weakening in the beliefs in traditional and ethical values, and a growing tendency to forget the end, and to treat the means as an end in themselves. So that is that philosophy of freedom, that a philosophy of, I have an urge at this moment, I want to fulfill it, I want to get it, no matter who it hurts, even it hurts myself. I don't think about the consequence. What religion is saying, what is trying to tell man, and this is a very important subject. This is very important for us all, and for the month of Ramadan in our Reformation, to understand this, because this is what I'm going to go forward with next, after discussing the many issues, that how we can improve ourselves morally, how we can adopt better morals, is that if we do not understand that we should use our reasoning and think over the consequences of every action we do, then we cannot go forward in this month of Ramadan and benefit from it. It will only just be a practice of not eating, and of just reading the Holy Quran without thinking, or maybe just listening to lectures, but not really deeply trying to see how they can benefit us. But if we try to see how we can benefit ourselves. Now, this is the main thing, that in a day-to-day life, religion is saying that your whole life will have at the end an outcome. This is day of judgment, the concept of accountability. But in every day-to-day life, and this in Islam does not mean that the accountability, day of judgment, is something that happens at a point of time after everyone has passed away, and then they'll be raised up. So the thing that which Islam is saying is that it also applies to this day, that accountability is in every decision that we make. There is an outcome. So that is why, and that is what we do every day. If we decide to, for instance, to take a course so that we can get a higher education, so that we can put on our resumes that we have this, this qualification, we will think over everything and deliberate what will be the outcome, how much money we will send, how much time we will put into that, so that we can get benefit. Will it be beneficial for us? Will it be, how will it, it will affect our, our children if we are actually already, have a family. How will it affect that? What will be the, the outcome? So we think about everything, and we deliberate what would be on everything that we do. And even if on little minor things, we think about what we eat, how it's going to affect our health. We become aware of, when we become aware of all of these things. And this is what Islam is saying, is that we shouldn't forget the outcome of our actions, that we shouldn't just be impulsive and try to do whatever we like, and never think of the consequences and the outcome of that. So the solution which the promised Messiah ﷺ has given is the solution which is given by the Holy Quran, and that's the three stage solution of reformation. And that was something which came about successfully in the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where there was a transformation of those who followed his message from being so corrupt, being so bent on anger and not being able to control their emotions, that they were able to control them, that they were able to not only just control them, but they were able to become so civilized and so moral and so decent people for their society, for their families, and that they became like a promised Messiah said, like just the defecation. They were like defecation, just so filthy that they became like diamonds. And they were the heights of spirituality that they rose with, were that they did rise to. Now, the three solutions I mentioned in the beginning, I'll just end on that. Those three solutions, just to revise what those things were, and then we will, inshallah, be taking those on after. Those is that first a person should become civilized, become a human being. They should reform themselves from being emotional, savage animals that just go for their on every emotion and get whatever they want and whatever they desire, to being civilized. And then after that, they should become more moral. That's the second stage. They should have a moral qualities, and moral qualities have stages. And then there is the final stage, which is a level of spirituality which is unending. And this is I would like to here turn, because we have some still some time. There were some questions that were asked in the week for the previous Dars al-Quran, which were before me. And one question was asked that there was a question and it was not answered, is that and so I'll try to see how many questions we can fulfill today, and if I'll try to do my best on getting to them tomorrow if I can't fulfill them all. But one question which I'll turn to right first of all is that was asked, and it actually pertains to the lecture that I am talking about today. And that question is that, can you explain the following? He it is who created for you all that is in the earth. Then he turned towards the heavens, and he perfected them as 7 heavens, and he knows all things. The questioner says, can you explain the following verse? He it is who created you, all that is in the earth. Then he turned towards the heavens, and he perfected them as 7 heavens, and he knows all things. This is a beautiful question, and the explanation that we're given by Hazrat Muslim Maud Razila Ta'ala Anhu on this verse is that when it talking first in the first place that man has been created in the earth. He said that God has created you in the earth, meaning that everything that has been created, in this universe has been created for the benefit of man. Benefit meaning that man can get whatever help they want from that, so that they can can progress in the earth. That is that is hitting here at the heart of the subject of today, of today's today's subject of how man can live among each other, how it progresses, how it uses everything that it has at its disposal, and how it when it uses all those things at its disposal rightfully, and with a with a good understanding of those things, and then it comes to an understanding of its purpose of life and why it is there, and it starts to then it takes to another step, which that is the questioner had asked, that is, what does it mean when he turned towards the heavens, and he perfected them as 7 heavens, and he knows all things. So that is that now when a man has progressed in the earth, and he has gone through using the benefits of the earth that he has had, and he has developed as a human being, and this is the progress which I was talking about, which the Holy Quran has outlined for the progress and reformation of mankind, that they become civilized, then they become moral. They become moral to such extents that they become more turning towards God. And this is what Hazrat Muslim Maud Razila Ta'ala Anhu has explained here, is that God, when a person, when it says here that it turned to the 7 heaven, means that is turning now to those things which are going to benefit you spiritually. And 7 heaven meaning the stages of spiritual progress. And Hazrat Muslim Maud Razila Ta'ala Anhu has said that the spiritual progress is something which will, because the name 7, or sorry, the number 7 in Arabic is such a number that means unlimited, in its amount, unending, infinite, in infinite amount. So that means that after we go through this life, we go through whatever we can do to advance morally, socially, at the best here. I mean, within the life that we have, we start to develop an understanding that the purpose of life is that we have been put here for a higher purpose, which is to advance spiritually. And the more and more someone becomes more refined, the more and more a person focuses on their morality and their self. They understand that this concept this creation that they were given was given from God, and that the life that they have here is meant to be uh, lived in a different form, and that is in a spiritual form, and that we understand that we were going to live in the hereafter. And I'll give an example of that. Promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam has explained that in the same book, Philosophy of the Teaching of Islam, that a person can understand that he has a different state that he can live in, which is not like the worldly state, and that is we learn in real life in our dreams, that in our dreams we can see, we can testify that we have gone to places outside of our body which are just as real as our life is here in this physical world. So he said that there is, according to this proof, that there is another form of existence which is much refined form of existence, and that's the life after this one. This subject has been taken up in the Philosophy of Teaching Islam, and hopefully, inshallah, we'll cover it. But this is what is meant by the 7 stages of, or the 7 heavens, that now you have been given now the spiritual benefits to advance, just as you were given the earth to benefit from it. Now you've been given the heavenly benefits to advance, and those benefits are going to be unending. There was also a question that was that was given, was that is the name Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was given to people prior to the advent of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that prior to the advent of Islam, that were people given the name of Muhammad. And we actually find that in the Bible, the Jewish Torah, that the name Muhammadim is mentioned there, and in the Holy Quran actually even mentions that. And the prophecies also were to a person of that name who had been given that name. And even there was a khutbah which was recently given by our beloved Hazur. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but he just recently gave about specifically on this topic, that the Jews were waiting for the person who would be named Muhammad. And inshallah, you can read that, get more detail from that. I'll mention it. I'll just mention it in my next dars tomorrow, which surah, which sermon that was from. Just checking here, any other questions which have come up today? There are still some other questions which there is a question here. I'm not really knowing the meaning, understanding the meaning of this. Since when and from where the concept of not getting married in Christian priests or Hindu priests and some other religions? If you can maybe, if the person who asked the question, if they can maybe reframe that. We don't in Islam. I was not really sure whether this is a question to the Jamaat, whether why we are itself do not Muslims get married through the in other churches, or and so on and so forth. So it's a little bit confused question. If they can rephrase that and send it again, I'll answer. But that is something which we can also discuss. in future. There is also another question which was asked. We have still a few minutes left. That Salam alaikum. I know we are not there yet, but can you please explain Surah Al-Ma'idah verse 111? What does it mean by when thou first fashioned a creation out of clay in the likeness of a bird by my command, then thou didst breathe into it a new spirit, and it became a soaring being by my command? So here here there is this is an explanation also which we were talking about the moral reformation, and then one person morally reforms himself, then they go from that stage up into a spiritual stage. So here when it says that when thou first fashioned a creation out of clay in the likeness of a bird by my command, then thou didst breathe into it a new spirit, and it became a soaring being by my command. So the creation out of clay here, this can be taken as the Holy Quran itself can be understood there are verses which have multiple meanings, that they have multiple understanding. Some can be literal, some can be metaphorical, some can be even to refer to sciences. And but in this case, when we understand it in its in a sense of where it's talking to the likeness of a bird, this is something which is a spiritual terminology of human being. That is, that when they become out of clay, when they come from this earth, they get transformed into into a bird. That is, that they get transformed into a spiritual being by the command of God. And fashioning out of clay is something which because that why I was saying here earlier is that it can be something interpreted as literal, that God normally is the one who fashions out of clay. Here the reference I believe is to Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, that he fashioned out of clay. It's not meaning that he has the ability to give the life to that which is dead, but it means that here the interpretation and understanding, proper understanding is that his followers were molded or malleable. They were able to be molded into moral human beings, and when they followed him, and he taught them, he trained them, he was able to teach them and to help them to evolve as moral human beings. And that's what this understanding of clay represents here in this sense. And then that they would be given the life, the likeness of a bird by my command, is that that what after they have gone to such a level of reformation and struggle to attain a higher level of being, that then they were given in them the life, or the spirit, the spiritual life was blown in them, given to them at this point, which is from God. And then at that stage, they were able to, as it were, fly. But this means spiritually, they were able to, become spiritual human beings and be above the worldly things. And then it says, and it became a soaring being by my command. Soaring meaning that it flew up even higher than than even just a normal, normal flight of a bird, but it went even higher. So this verse as well, here I'll just explain at some other stage. There's some other meanings which we can devise out of it, but the time is run out for that. And hopefully, inshallah, we will continue to cover more interesting questions. There are some other which I haven't covered yet, which I'll try to do that. And if not, then inshallah, Rabbi Nabil Mirza Sahib will do that. Jazakumullah. Thank you everyone for staying with me. I really do appreciate it. Please pray for me, pray for everyone. This is our moral duty, and pray for the world situation. Inshallah ta'ala, the same time tomorrow, I'll have my Dars al Quran, and I'll see everyone. Jazakumullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.